Seasons have a way of overstaying their welcome. For winter, the holidays are over, the decorations are down, and I'm in that last stretch where it stops being cozy and starts feeling just endless. And if you're anything like me, this is where real sadness sets in. It's the kind where getting out of bed just feels impossible and spring feels like a myth. That feeling of being trapped between who you were and who you're supposed to become, waiting for conditions to improve while the world gets colder and darker around you. Over the Garden Wall gets used as a Halloween tradition, but I think we've been watching it in the wrong season. Because it's a story about being lost in transition, between seasons, between identities, between optimism and dread. It's about a beast that doesn't need to attack because he knows how to wait for you to give up. And it's about two brothers learning that you can't escape the unknown, but you can refuse to fear it. So let's venture into that unknown and what it actually means to find your way home. Over the Garden Wall is a must-watch during autumn. It doesn't matter if I even pay attention. I've seen it so many times I can do whatever work I've got, and humming to potatoes and molasses immediately puts me in a good mood. Undead pumpkin people led by a black cat in disguise, little girls who eat people, love stories between ghosts, frogs whose debut album would absolutely go platinum. It has all the components for a vibey Halloween-themed pick-me-up. But what I've long thought about is how the climax, and more importantly, its moment of all hope is lost, hits with a smack of winter. The unknown, the forest where the series takes place, is where for the first 8 episodes, time seems to stand still on those late October days and nights. In episode 9, we have everything we thought we knew about our main characters, Greg and his elder brother Wirt, recontextualized. They aren't residents in this land where the strange and eerily familiar coexist. They're modern children in Halloween costumes, their last memory climbing over a cemetery wall, dodging a train, and barreling down a hill into freezing water. They have no idea how they came to wander in these woods, far more lost than they realize. Some argue that this is because the unknown is limbo, or hell, winter's presence symbolizing the brothers succumbing to hypothermia, yet that feels too limiting. The unknown trades all certainty for nuance that's right on the tip of our tongues. It's where those who wander are like leaves swept up by the wind, either hopeless, believing all the goodness of their life is over and they're waiting to be crushed into dust, or enjoying their time, admiring the sights, knowing it will bring them right back to the place from where they came. Greg, with his teapot turned elephant hat, is the latter. He sees the world as infinitely possible. Problems are puzzles, impossible tasks become games. Greg hasn't learned yet that not everyone has his best interests at heart, and sometimes things can't be fixed with enough imagination and a musical number. Wirt, wearing a costume he can't even name, is paralyzed by the fear of the unknown, of being misunderstood and failing so completely that there's no coming back. They're a child on the cusp of adolescence and a teenager growing into adulthood. The unknown is where their transitions should happen, where they confront what they're running from and return home better for it. But the problem becomes that the unknown doesn't want to let them go. It wants to drag them down, keep Wirt believing escape is impossible, and keep Greg believing he can do anything, even if it almost gets him killed. Because for all its endearing charm, the unknown is built on the loveliest lie, saying, yes, things are ending, but look at how beautiful it is. Look at the colors, feel the cozy air. This is fine. It says that if you just wait long enough, things will naturally improve, that you can coast through the in-between without taking action. But autumn, like all seasons, always ends. And what comes after is winter, where each day blurs into the next and you start to forget what warmth even felt like, where you're left with that creeping sense that nothing will ever get better. By the final episodes, the unknown sheds its disguise entirely. The brothers are freezing, starving, and Greg is turning into a tree because Wirt has given in entirely to the idea that they're never going home. Because winter, like sadness, hopelessness, doesn't ask if you're ready, it simply takes appetite, enjoyment, hope, and if you stop moving, if you sit down in the cold and decide to see nothing but sweet, false dreams, you don't survive. Lost doesn't quite cover what the unknown is, but it's close. According to Over the Garden Wall's creator Patrick McHale, the unknown showcases the dichotomy of reality and fantasy, or alternatively, truth and lies. This persists throughout the narrative, most obviously in the advice Wirt and Greg receive, which, although rarely malicious, is based on miscommunication, subsequently leading to characters and situations that aren't what they first appear. Visually, the unknown could be in the early 20th century, or the 19th, 18th, or even the 17th. Its seasons don't have a slow, predictable descent, nor are the residents echoes of fairy tales both dark and fanciful, ever who you assume. We might as well be as lost as our characters, because the whole setting is as obscure as the unknown itself, which, of course, there's no single satisfying answer to what the unknown is, otherwise it would be, well, known. One thing I can say for certain is among the many people Wirt and Greg meet during their journey, they're all stuck in their little pockets of life. Lives that shift for the better by the brothers' interruption. Pumpkins that appear to be a homicidal cult are revealed to be the peaceful residents of a potter's field, content to wait because you'll join us someday. A foul-tempered man who seems to hate his school for animals turns out to be heartbroken that his life's work was a financial failure, wishing desperately that something would just go right for a change. Lorna appears to be the captive of a wicked witch, but she's actually possessed by a cannibal spirit that only the witch's devotion keeps at bay. Even Beatrice, who travels alongside them as an ally, has been leading them toward betrayal the entire time to save her family from a curse that she caused by throwing a rock at a bluebird. Until the brothers visit, everyone in the unknown appears to have a problem they're waiting to get solved. And that is why the unknown is an infinitely dangerous place, because waiting feels safe. How can you be hurt by doing nothing? You're being perfectly patient, reasonable, and realistic about your limitations. But by always taking the safe path, the way forward forms a circle. And you start to believe that this repetitive, listless state is just how things are now. In this way, Wirt's reaction to the unknown feels uncomfortably relatable. Much like him following Beatrice to find a witch to send him home, Wirt's anxiety and uncertainty blind him into accepting whatever seems like the direction of least pain. This same attribute is what keeps him from seeing that people, Greg, his friends at home, really like and admire him. Like Wirt, many of us find safety in expecting the worst, but this makes it hard to tell the difference between someone who wants to help and someone who wants to hurt you. Which Wirt does exactly this with Greg. He takes out his unhappiness on his younger brother, using Greg as a scapegoat for his embarrassment with his crush, with breaking the gristmill, for really anything. But through their journey, Wirt's perspective shifts. He rescues, albeit unintentionally, the school teacher's fiancé. He connects two people who thought they were in love with ghosts. He performs a musical number that earns him the title of a pilgrim who just needs to listen to the compass in his heart, and even overcomes his fear that no one would want to listen to his music, captivating a crowd of frogs dead set on throwing the brothers overboard. For the first time, Wirt feels capable. He confides in Beatrice about Sarah, his crush, about Jason Funderburger, the guy he's convinced is everything he's not. Beatrice tells him that back home he might be a loser, but here he's a hero. So when Beatrice's betrayal is revealed, Wirt regresses further into himself than where he began. He flees with Greg, avoiding their new friend even though she saves them and tries to explain her actions weren't what it looked like. Wirt swears he never should have trusted anyone. The very light in the unknown shifts darker. The frogs have gone into hibernation, rain beats down on the brothers who no longer have a fixed destination in mind because returning home seems like a distant fantasy. The unknown's abrupt descent into winter only validates Wirt's feelings. It confirms any encouragement to put himself out there or be confident was setting him up for humiliation. And when he gets too comfortable, the world will always remind him why he shouldn't have tried. None of the lives they've improved seem to matter now that Wirt thinks his own is ruined. Like all times we feel hopeless, it arrives quietly, rarely during the catastrophe itself. He sinks into isolation because sadness, the type that feels comforting and familiar, convinces us that is the answer. So you withdraw even more into your perceived sense of safety, where waiting feels like the best way to survive a nightmare that never ends. Yet when Wirt awakens to find his brother gone, the nightmare has become real. All this time, he's been running from threats that existed in his head. The beast lurking in the shadows, Sarah's inevitable rejection, Jason Funderburker having his act together, the certainty that everything he tries to do will take him nowhere. He gave these fears teeth and claws they never actually had. But Greg is real and missing. This jarring event, a result of Wirt's own pessimistic stubbornness, forces Wirt from his safe little hole in the blizzard, still his skeptical, overly rational self, but finally understanding that while he can't avoid danger, trying and failing was never the real threat. It was succumbing to the beasts of his own imagination that convinced him waiting was safer than taking action. What I love most about the Beast in Over the Garden Wall is he isn't a threat on his own. He's well-spoken, calm, and manipulates people without laying a single finger on them by convincing them doing his bidding is actually defying him. "The beast is upon me," we hear throughout the story, yet there is no beast to be seen until episode 4. Even then, he's a shadow. He asks the woodsman to let him take the lantern for a while and easily gives up when the man pushes back. But of course he does. The woodsman believes that the lantern holds his daughter's soul, and the beast has put it in his mind that the only thing keeping her alive is grinding edelwood trees for oil. What we later learn is the beast's motivation is purely self-preservation. The lantern is fueled by lost souls who gave up and became edelwood trees, and the beast is very, very good at being indifferent to the pain and suffering he causes because keeping the lantern lit protects him from the true darkness of non-existence. His role in Wirt and Greg's story reflects that the whole show is about contrition. The old witch wasn't the cannibal, the dog wasn't the beast, the pumpkins weren't evil. The same goes for the beast, for whom the fear of what he might do is far more menacing than anything he does. He's a weak creature, a beast like Wirt's worries without teeth or claws. In fact, the beast needs people to believe the lantern is protecting them from something in the dark, when really they're just casting the shadow they've been taught to fear. It is only when you've let him into your head that the beast becomes dangerous. He knows everyone has a torch to burn, and by spreading despair that poisons you against your own best interests, all he needs to do is wait. Your own hopelessness will overtake you. And for Wirt, the beast's influence comes rather obviously. From the beginning, the elder brother had no hope beyond that if they kept walking, they would eventually find someone who could lead them home. At his lowest point following Beatrice's betrayal, he disregards the woodsman's warning to stay hardy in body and soul, or their lives shall pass into the beast's crooked hands. And this is where I think most people misunderstand the unknown. So many assume Over the Garden Wall implies death will play with you, and it's purely up to you to get yourself free. I prefer it to be more about living death. About every step taken is in fear of a beast hidden in the dark that is no more a threat to you than your own shadow. About how giving up on all that is hopeful and good has you rotting away while you're still breathing, which is exactly what Wirt does. Greg is a child. He trusts Wirt completely. If his elder brother gives up and says he's now the leader, Greg will shoulder the responsibility. He worries that if they're not getting anywhere, he must be leading wrong. So when Greg's bravery grants him any wish by the Queen of the Clouds, he asks her to send him and his brother home. But she tells him Wirt is too lost, that the edelwood is already growing around him. Greg doesn't hesitate. He asks, "Isn't there anything I can do?" And when she offers him a trade, his service to the beast in exchange for Wirt's freedom, Greg willingly gives himself up. But Greg following the beast into the blizzard doesn't save Wirt, it just completes the trap the beast has been setting all along, to give Wirt a reason to replace the woodsman as his lantern bearer. So the beast uses the same strategy that's worked on everyone else. Break their spirit with impossible tasks and make them give up. He tells Greg to bring a spool of silver thread. Greg brings a spider web on a stick. Fetch a golden comb. Greg brings a honeycomb. Lower the sun into a teacup. Greg figures it out through imagination. Each time Greg thinks he's winning. "I'll never give up," he says, "just gotta wait." Yet never losing hope becomes the very thing that dooms him, because optimism and pessimism aren't opposites when neither one gets you anywhere. The show frames both responses as understandable, and depending on whether you're a Wirt or a Greg, how you respond to adversity might not make any difference if your solution is the same: waiting. When Wirt comes to Greg's aid, this is where in most fairy tales there would be a tragic end or a heroic battle. But the unknown bends the meaning between fantasy and reality, where what we believe to be true, even in defiance of our eyes, connects to the very way we interpret the world. Sadness and the comforting blanket of hopelessness it smothers you with convinces you that you're too lost to find home, so you might as well take what you can get. This is the lie that the Beast is counting on when he offers Wirt the lantern, a way to make Greg's sacrifice mean something. As long as the flame stays lit, he will live on inside, the Beast tells him, just as he did to the woodsman. Which is a miscalculation. Wirt isn't a typical hero. That anxious, pessimistic, always assuming the worst Wirt doesn't buy into this offer and says what no one else has. That's dumb. He's not going to wander around in the woods for the rest of his life. The Beast swears he's just trying to help, but Wirt is looking at the situation with his keenly suspicious eyes, the sight that the young Greg is too innocent to see, and realizes the Beast's obsession with the lantern is weird. It's almost like your soul is in the lantern, he says. The Beast gives one final attempt asking if Wirt is ready to see true darkness. And Wirt, in all his stubbornness, calls the Beast's bluff. Are you? Because the Beast is just a shadow. That fear that feels so real even though you can't quite name what threat it poses, just that it makes your heart race and your body feel heavy with dread. And Wirt finally sees that the Beast's only threat was the power he gave it. So he leaves the lantern to the woodsman, telling him he's got his own problems to take care of. He and Greg are going home. One of the reasons I really dislike the idea that the unknown is hell or the Beast is the devil is what happens after Wirt and Greg have left. The woodsman blows out the Beast's lantern and something good actually happens. His daughter returns to him. All of the characters Wirt and Greg helped are still residents of the unknown, but we're shown their happy endings. Happiness they found not because the brothers were secretly powerful chosen ones meant to guide souls toward eternal peace, but Wirt and Greg stumbled in, asked questions, refused to accept convenient answers, and shifted what had been stuck for who knows how long. Beatrice, for one, was so hopelessly desperate to save her family that she was willing to hurt others. She is motivated by the change in the brothers' personalities to admit her own wrongdoings, and it's only when she stops acting out of fear that she's able to break the curse. It was by taking responsibility and thinking about others the Wirt overcame what kept them from going home. Whereas before he would have run away or just accepted the Beast's offer, Wirt admits his own role in getting them into this mess and that Greg is not at all at fault. He seems to understand that he is the elder brother, the one who should be determined and mature. Greg is still too much of a child to understand danger. I mean, Greg thinks what got them into this mess is he was a bad leader and because he stole a rock from Old Lady Daniel's garden. So Wirt delivers his first bit of optimism in the show not concerning himself by telling Greg, who was certain he's done for, that he can return the rock himself. He even reveals that he's finally given Greg's frog a name, Jason Funderburker. Contrasting with how at the start he wanted nothing to do with either of them, his outburst directly resulting in them rolling down that hill and plummeting into that water. He began as an insecure teenager, perceiving Greg's positivity and encouragement as ignorant of Wirt's limitations that he was so sure existed and which he feared were impossible to overcome. Yet when Wirt sets his mind to them going home, it's instant. For all their time spent wandering the unknown, they ended up right where they began. Because you can't escape the unknown. There will always be a new shadow you're unsure of that you have the option of submitting to out of fear of what might happen, what might get worse, or saying, "That's dumb," and choosing to roll your eyes. When the brothers wake up in their world, Wirt makes his first choice by pulling Greg and Jason Funderburker to safety. He's a hero now in this world too. This also applies to Greg. Greg has been a child fixated on whimsy for the entire story. Instead of justifying stealing the old lady's rock as he might have done before, he quietly returns it to her garden, finally grasping the concept of actions and consequences. When the brothers come to in the hospital, all Wirt's friends are around them and concerned for his well-being. He sees what all of us saw in episode 9 when he was so concerned with being misunderstood that he had been feeling unwanted in a place where he was clearly wanted. Finally grasping that fear and inaction also have their own consequences, Wirt invites Sarah to come to his house so they can listen to his tape together. There's yet the unknown of how this will turn out, but they're back in autumn, the season of transition, with another chance to choose differently. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying to stop watching Over the Garden Wall around Halloween. I know I sure won't. But it's a story that can be enjoyed as much around Halloween as New Year's, maybe even more, because it tells you that when things feel endless and hopeless, the only thing you can do is take a moment to be okay with the unknown and then actively pursue change on a path that you decide. That's what seasons themselves teach us. Growth requires moments of pause. Spring only exists because in winter all that was lovely and true ended. The loveliest lies of all the opening song warned us about were the stories we tell ourselves to keep moving when the path disappears, the hope that we choose to believe in even when we can't see proof it's justified. Over the Garden Wall is far more than a journey into hell via a near-death experience. It's about surviving the times when happiness feels unreachable, about refusing to let yourself be manipulated by your fears. Because if you keep trying, even when you're cold, lost, even when every step feels pointless, eventually you wake up and realize the unknown only ever really had the power that you gave it. I write more stories like this over on my Substack, and if you'd like to support the channel with a coffee, it really helps me keep caffeinated and going. But honestly, just being here is more than enough. So if you made it this far, thanks for wandering through the unknown with me, and if you get stuck wishing things would just go right for a change, ditto. That's why I'm Pickle Ditto, because whatever storytelling pickle you're in, I've probably been there too.